Hello, in this video I am going to talk about factory design pattern. One of the popular design pattern that is being used in software development. What is this? Factory design pattern means a factory is an object to create other objects. So you have a factory like a class and it will create other subclasses or other instances of other subclasses. In general terms, you have a factory from where certain types of items are produced and delivered. In technical terms, a factory is a class with one or few methods, and the method creates and returns different objects based on the input parameters. I will show the implementation after this presentation. So last point, pattern creates an object without exposing the object creation logic to the client. So client will not exposed to the object creation. Rather, the factory is responsible to create the object and client will only consume the created object by the factory. When to use? When you need complex object creation based on some conditions. And when you need object creation needs to place in a centralized place. And when you need dynamic instantiation, and when you need several similar type of object families or object categories. Now I am going to describe the implementation of factory design pattern. I have opened the open close principle implementation that I did earlier. So factory design pattern is a slight modification of the open close principle. In the factory design pattern, what we did earlier, we had an interface with a method, and for the concrete classes, we implemented the interface for the final invoice and for the proposed invoice. And in the program class, that means in the client class, we created an instance with the concrete class, proposed invoice and final invoice, and assigned it to the interface. And we actually called the method for each of the concrete classes. Here, the thing is, we are creating the instance for the invoice type, proposed invoice and final invoice in our client. But for the factory design pattern, if I actually uncomment this line and comment this one, this part and this part is the same. Here we declared a variable invoice type, and based on the type of the invoice, we assign the concrete classes to the interface and call the method. So this is the open close principle. This part and this part is the same, are the same implementation functionally. Now for the factory design pattern, what we have to do, we should not actually create instance in the program class, that means in the client class. So client should not know about the instance creation. For that, we created a class called invoice factory, and this factory will actually create the instance based on the type of the invoice type. So we have a method, static method, which will return the invoice after assigning the type of invoice, after assigning the classes based on the type of the invoice and returning the interface. So this factory will actually create the concrete classes instance, and the client class will know nothing about the instance creation. So in the program class, we will only pass the type of the invoice, and based on the type of the invoice, we will get the concrete class instance and assign it to it, the invoice info, to variable in this case. And the client will only call the invoice method of the specific type. Here, in this case, it will call the get invoice discount based on the interface, and here the invoice info will be assigned based on the type of the interface with the country class. So this is the basic difference of the factory design pattern. So in short, factory design pattern will not create instance in the client. Client will know nothing about the instance creation. It will just pass the invoice type parameter to the factory, and factory will create instance, and in the program client will call the designated method based on the instance. So I hope you have understood the subtle differences between the open close principle and factory design pattern. If I run the application, so 50, it will return 50 because we have passed the invoice type proposed statically with the hard-coded value, and we will return the proposed invoice here 50, passing the 100. So I hope you have understood the factory design pattern. Thank you.